Hello everyone, my name is Herkeph and welcome back to my incredibly stupid hardcore world where I'm only allowed to use leather armor and wooden tools. This time, we're starting off with an incredibly exciting adventure, that being slowly mining blocks with a wooden tool. Once I had stolen all of the books from the first library, I then decided to spend 5 minutes and 20 seconds searching for the second library, which admittedly doesn't sound like a long time, but it felt significantly longer. See, this is running it on 8 times speed. Feels pretty long, right? However, I did manage to find the second library in the end, which meant I could once again provide you with superior content. And once I had emptied the second library of all books and chests, I thought it would be a good idea to steal the cobwebs in the form of string, as it could potentially come in handy at some point. Then when I had completely stuffed my pockets with someone else's belongings, I broke my bed and jumped back into the end to then go back to where I first spawned. I decided to relieve a cow of its milk to remove the mining fatigue I had somehow acquired in the stronghold. I then remembered that I completely ignored the carved pumpkins right by where we spawned, and decided to finally steal them. I then flew to the nearest desert and mined myself some sandstone, as I wanted to use it for my ultimate starter base, which is of course trademarked. This meant that I could check off one of the building materials that I wanted to use for my starter house. The build I had in mind would require sandstone, which we had already found, dark oak, spruce, as well as mangrove wood, which for some reason is incredibly annoying to find, since mangrove swamps seem to be even rarer than a girl flirting with me. Shortly after I had set off to find the fabled swamp, I ran into yet another pillager outpost, which I think is the 5th one I've found in this world. But this one had 8 carved pumpkins, which was absolutely insane. I quickly stole the carved pumpkins as well as their belongings they tried to hide in a chest at the top of their tower. I then realized that in between this episode and last, they had found the aim assist option, so I decided to fly off. And after flying a bit, I realized that I had flown all the way over to the stronghold once again. However, I didn't mind in the slightest, as I realized that there was a mangrove swamp right next to the desert. I then punched the air in front of me with a rocket to convey how excited I was and grabbed a total of 7 seedlings. I then decided to grab myself a few jungle saplings as well, just because I could, and continued my quest to find the saplings I needed for my starter house. The next one we found was the dark oak sapling, which I made sure to grab quite a few for since they only grow with 4 saplings. And not far from the dark oak forest, I ran into some spruce, which completed the collection of saplings we would need in the short term. I fell asleep in the forest once again, like a proper alcoholic, and set off. Now all I had to do was to find somewhere decent to live, and I only had a few requirements there. I wanted to find a village nearby, and it couldn't be a snowy biome, since I prefer not being depressed. It didn't take long before I found a plains biome, which fit all of my requirements, and decided to establish my newfound land and get started with my starter base. Just like everyone else, I decided to start with the basement, and dug out a 9x9 area, which I was planning on being my villager breeder. Digging out the area was of course incredibly fun and exciting to do using unenchanted wooden tools. My area where I live, including me, then lost connection to the internet, which temporarily transformed me to a woman color. Nonetheless, I kept digging, but this time with my fist. You might be wondering why I no longer used a wooden shovel, and the answer is actually quite straightforward. I simply didn't feel like I hated my life quite enough. Eventually I had made a 9x9 hole in the ground going 4 blocks deep, meaning I could finally move on to doing what I had been looking forward to for a long time, placing dirt. I then prepared my basement by adding a water source and tilling the dirt to make farmland. I then planted my potatoes, carrots and saplings and dug out an area which the babies would be transported to soon in the future. I then decided to start luring some unsuspecting civilians into their new permanent home, i.e. my basement. Once the civilians had been transported to their new home, I started work on my starter house, which would be placed on top of the baby makers in my basement. I quickly realized that I had severely underestimated how much materials I would need to build the house and spent the next 2 hours gathering materials and building. only to be interrupted by a baby that had made its way outside of the system. I added a transportation system to the villager breeder and continued building. And this is the end product of that little montage. It's clearly not done, since it looks like a psycho's apartment inside, but the exterior is pretty much done, and I'm quite content with it. I ran to show it off to my mother, and she promptly informed me that I'm adopted. And there you have it, the second episode of my incredibly stupid hardcore world. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.